I, female 32, came home to find my neighbor's new in-ground pool shell and deck encroaching 2.5 feet onto my lot. A licensed survey confirmed it. They begged me to just sell us the strip, but zoning setbacks and a utility easement made that impossible. City issued a stop work. The contractor's license and insurance got involved. Then a storm sent chlorinated runoff onto my garden. After code enforcement hearings, daily fines, and an HOA pile-on, the pool company ate the cost and demolished the shell. Neighbors tried to spin it like I ruined their summer. I rebuilt the boundary. New fence on the true line, a hedge, and a spine. I bought my little house 3 years ago, a 1950s ranch with a yawning oak out front, and a backyard that is 70% dandelion ambition. The west side lot line runs straight between my yard. Mine is compost bins, an herb spiral, a very proud hose reel. And my neighbor's yard, theirs is a trampoline that could put a satellite in orbit. The neighbors, Darren, a man 35 years old, and Kelsey, a woman 33 years old, moved in last year with a toddler and a golden retriever named Moose, who believes in diplomacy by slobber. We were wave, when you bring in the trash bins close, not borrow an egg close, that was fine by me. I work in architecture administration. I like lines, labels, and the peace that arrives when rectangles make sense. In May, a crew rolled up to their driveway with a skid steer and the kind of music that assumes everyone loves bass. Blue sticks appeared, then orange paint, then a small excavator that bit a rectangle out of their lawn like a cake slice. They were getting an in-ground pool. We had not discussed it, not required. I figured their permit application went through the city and possibly the homeowners association. Ours is small but real. The president is Carol, and she can smell non-compliant mailbox heights. On day 2, the excavation crept toward our shared fence, a chain-link relic. I noticed a property pin had been yanked, one of those little rebar stakes that tell you, here be dragons and lot lines. The crew replaced it with a wooden stake tied to string that now ran inside my yard by an amount my eyes did not love. I measured with my very official tape measure like a person in a meme, from my back patio to the stake, to the oak, to the side gate, triangulating with the plat map the title company gave me at closing. Human tape and plat map equals vibes, not law, but the vibes said something is off. I texted Kelsey and asked which survey they were using for the layout and said I wanted to make sure the old pins were intact on my side. She replied with emojis and said the pool company did a site plan. I asked for a copy. Darren texted me a photo of a site sketch with a pool rectangle, a north arrow that was probably decorative, and a hand-drawn line labeled property line approximate. Approximate was doing a lot of labor there. On day 4, steel rebar went in, then a concrete bond beam formed the pool edge. The crew shot concrete for the shell before lunch like they were speed-running summer. My stomach did cartwheels. I called the city building and safety office. The clerk confirmed a residential pool permit had been issued with a site plan showing a 5-foot setback from side lot lines, which is standard here. And she read me the contractor's name, Sungrove Pools Company. I asked if the city inspected layout before the pour. She said the contractor self-certifies layout, and the city inspects steel and bonding, shell and barrier. She added that if I suspected an encroachment, that was a civil matter, but they would flag it for the inspector. I wrote down civil like it owed me rent. I hired a licensed surveyor, the kind whose van looks like it carries secrets. Earliest slot was Friday. It was Tuesday. By Wednesday, they had framed the deck, pavers on sand over compacted base, coping hugging my chain-link fence like a koala. Moose stuck his head through the fence links and tried to be Switzerland. That evening, I knocked. Darren answered with a beer and confidence. He said it is tight, but the site plan shows they are good. I asked for the plan. He pointed at a 3-ring binder on the kitchen counter that was full of printouts and a single copy of what looked like the pool company marketing brochure. There was no stamped survey, no bearings and distances, just vibes and tiles. He said that if they ended up a little over, we could work something out and that I could sell them the strip. He made it sound like buying parsley at the store. I said there is a utility easement along that line, 5 feet for drainage and buried lines, and an easement is not parsley, it is more like air. He shrugged and said everyone on the street slides a little. He meant fences. He meant optimism. Friday, the surveyor came with tripods and gravitas. He found my front pin exactly where it was supposed to be, thank you previous sensible owners. The west rear pin, the one the crew had displaced, came up 24 inches inside my yard, behind my herb spiral. He shot lines, set hubs, and spray-painted hot pink marks on my lawn. Then he measured to the inside edge of the new pool shell and wrote a number on his clipboard. He said 31 inches at the tightest point. The shell crosses the line by 2.5 feet here. The coping and deck extend further in a diagonal. He added that I also have the 5-foot drainage and utility easement on my side, and that the pool is within that easement. I exhaled a sound that has no spelling. He staked lath along the true line and flagged it neon. He promised a stamped survey by Monday. I thanked him like he had delivered a lost child, and paid him like he had delivered twins. I walked next door and asked to speak to both Darren and Kelsey. Moose wiggled. Kelsey's eyes went big and worried. Darren said there is no way they are over that much. I pointed at the lath and said that way. He tried to step over the lath onto my side to visualize. I asked him not to step on my herb spiral. He paused mid-stride and invented a new yoga pose called Here Comes a Lawsuit. I explained the easement. I explained setbacks. I explained that even if I wanted to sell them a strip, I could not, because the city requires minimum side yards and the easement is not transferable. Also, the homeowners association would combust. He said rules are more like guidelines. I pointed at my surveyor who was still packing up lasers and said my guideline comes stamped. He pivoted to appeal and asked me to be cool. Kelsey, with sincerity that made me ache, said they put their savings into this and the kids have been excited. I felt sympathy for kids I know nothing about. I also felt the outline of the pool in my yard and a pressure in my temples that read no. I said I am calling the city and the pool company, and I am telling the homeowners association. I am sorry, this is not fixable with Be Cool. To their credit, Sungrove answered fast. The project manager, Eli, said they would send their layout person who has a laser level and an aura of denial. I emailed them the surveyor's preliminary with a big red line labeled Do Not Ignore. The city inspector came Monday morning, looked at the lath, checked the permit plan that, surprise, had a dimensioned 5-foot side setback and placed a red stop work order on the temporary fence. The paper flapped like justice. Darren pulled it off and shoved it in his pocket. The inspector placed another one. Darren did not remove that one. Homeowners Association Carol arrived like she had been summoned by the scent of noncompliance. She held up a printout of the Architectural Review Committee approval. It approved a pool in concept but required the final city permit and no infringement on easements or adjoining property. Carol is 5 feet tall and speaks like laminated paper. She said this is an infringement. Then she took photos and used the word fine 3 different ways, each with increasing spice. Sungrove Eli showed up with a foreman and a man with a tablet who said datum like he paid rent with it. They measured from my lath to their shell. Eli went progressively pale. He said the site plan they were given had a different property line. I asked if it was a signed survey or just a sketch. He did not answer. Darren leaned on bravado and asked if we could just adjust the fence. Eli muttered that the shell is shot concrete and the shell is where it is. The city inspector said they would be issuing a notice of violation and scheduling a code hearing in 2 weeks. He also said cheerfully that everyday work continues is a potential daily fine. Eli told his crew to pack it up. The crew left like a circus you regret hiring. That night, an anonymous post appeared on our neighborhood social group saying some folks love to ruin other people's summer and asking if anyone had heard of kindness. Carol commented with the bylaws document and a photo of the stop work. 10 likes, 4 popcorn emojis, and 2 essays from a man named Rick about property rights, 1 correct and 1 loud. I started a folder on my desktop called Pool Read Before Rage. It had subfolders labeled Survey, City, Homeowners Association, Emails, Photos, Insurance. I labeled things like I was being graded. My spine grew 3 inches. At 3 in the morning, a storm rolled through and dumped an inch of rain in 20 minutes. I woke to the sound of water sheeting off their exposed deck base onto my side. Chlorinated water is not great for herbs, but their compacted base and my yard slope made a creak. I watched my time float by like a tiny ship and thought, tomorrow. Tomorrow came. Update 1. The storm carved ruts into my yard along the lath, sand washed from their paver base, and piled like a miniature dune against my chain link. My compost bins tilted like drunk sailors. I took photos. I measured the sediment depth with a ruler because grief looks like science in my house. At 8 in the morning, I emailed Sungrove, Darren, and Kelsey, Homeowners Association Carol, and City Inspector Mike, with the subject runoff and sediment from encroaching pool work and damage on my side. I explained that the storm sent sand and runoff from the unprotected deck base across the property line onto my yard, that this resulted from the encroaching work being above grade and lacking silt fences and erosion control, and I asked for confirmation that Sungrove would install silt fencing on their side that day, send a crew to remove sediment from my lawn by hand with no equipment crossing my line under my supervision, and cover replacement of damaged plantings and re-leveling. Eli responded within the hour with apologies, a promise to install silt fencing, and a plan to send a crew. They showed up with trash bags and shovels and very apologetic faces. Darren came out to help, which mostly involved him narrating how much he loves summer. I said nothing. I also called my homeowner's insurance. The adjuster, with a voice like a cardigan, explained my policy covers sudden and accidental damage, not disputes over title or land. Landscaping loss is limited. She suggested I file under the neighbor's liability or the contractor's. I logged the advice in my folder. Kelsey came over that afternoon with cookies and a speech. She was sorry. She said this was their dream pool, that they had saved for so long, and the kids had been excited. She asked if we could come to an arrangement where they buy the strip, and said Darren's uncle is a real estate agent who could do the paperwork, that they would pay the survey, and that I could even use their pool. She meant it. I wished I could live in a world where kindness solves physics. I said gently that even if I wanted to, I could not sell the strip, that the city requires minimum side yard setbacks and this strip is part of that, that the utility easement exists to let people dig or drain and you cannot give it away, that even a lot line adjustment would likely fail zoning, and that the pool itself has to be 5 feet off the line and right now it is negative 31 inches off. I watched hope leave her face. She said they would talk to Sungrove, maybe they could shave it. I did not ask what she thought shot concrete was made of. Update 2. The code hearing was held in a small room with strange carpet and a hearing officer who looked exactly like the chair. Present were me, Inspector Mike, Homeowners Association Carol, with a binder of bylaws and the smell of peppermint, Sungrove General Manager Trent, with a lawyer wearing a suit that had opinions, Darren and Kelsey, and 3 neighborhood spectators who live for drama. Mike laid out the facts. The permit shows a 5-foot side setback. The site inspection and license survey demonstrate an encroachment by about 31 inches at the tightest point, with coping and deck further into my lot, and the encroachment is also within the recorded drainage and utility easement. He recommended an order to correct, with 30 days to submit an engineer remediation plan, stop work continued, and daily fines for activity. Trent tried to say the site plan they were provided showed the line differently, which is like telling your teacher the dog ate the theorem. The officer asked if the plan was a stamped survey. Trent looked at the suit and admitted it was a homeowner-provided site sketch. The officer wrote the word sketch in a way that will never be fun again. Darren stood to speak and said they are not trying to be unkind and thought the fence was the line, and that everyone fences are a little off here. Carol, like a polite guillotine, said fences are not property lines. The officer nodded. The order to correct issued. 30 days to submit a plan, 60 days to implement once approved, no use of the pool, no additional work, erosion controls to be installed now, and daily fines of $250 for any violation. After the hearing, the offers began. Darren offered to pay $10,000 for an easement that lets the pool stay. Unfortunately, you cannot grant an easement that violates another easement and zoning, and $10,000 does not grow me a new rectangle. The pool company lawyer offered to cut the deck and cantilever the coping with a custom detail and pay for a new privacy fence on the line, which would still leave the shell across the line. Trent offered to buy a strip and handle the lot line adjustment. The city planner responded in writing, denied, and explained minimum side yard and drainage requirements prevent reduction and that the pool is a prohibited structure within the easement. Kelsey whispered that they would put me on the pool schedule anytime. I said I like my yard. I hired a real estate attorney for a consultation. She wrote a polite but sharp letter to Sungrove and the neighbors confirming the encroachment per license survey, noting the easement violation and setback breach, demanding cessation of all work, erosion control and removal of encroaching improvements by a date certain, advising that trespass is continuing and damages are accruing including runoff, plant loss and loss of use, and offering to sign a temporary construction license allowing access across a defined corridor on my side for the sole purpose of removal and remediation once an engineer plan is approved by the City and Homeowners Association. I am not a litigious person, I am a plan-happy person. The letter was a plan. Sungrove insurer contacted me next. The general liability adjuster named Marie, with a voice like a ruler, wanted to take a recorded statement. My attorney advised written only. Marie, in writing, floated a cost of restoration settlement that read like a hostage note dictated by a calculator. New fence for me, resawed. $600 for plants. $0 for loss of quiet enjoyment. And buried in a paragraph my agreement to sign a perpetual tolerance for the encroachment. I printed it and underlined perpetual until the ink felt like a threat. I declined. By day 25 of the order, Sungrove submitted a remediation plan to demolish the encroaching portion of the shell, shift the interior wall inward with bonded dowels and rebar, re-pour the beam, regrade the deck, and re-inspect bonding, essentially surgery on a turtle while it is alive. The city asked for a structural engineer stamp. Sungrove hired one. The engineer returned a report that might as well have been titled, "This is unwise," and said cutting the shell would compromise structural integrity and waterproofing unless they rebuilt more than half the pool. Translation: demolish and start over. Darren posted on the neighborhood board, saying someone is making them tear out their pool and that they wanted to be neighbors and asked if that is illegal now. The comments were lively. Carol posted the order to correct document and asked for civility. Rick posted a meme of a man measuring his lawn with a laser. I did not engage. That week, Sungrove crew arrived with jackhammers and then left because Kelsey cried on the foreman. The daily fines began for non-compliance. The city sent a reminder of penalties with numbers in bold. Numbers are persuasive. The storm that Wednesday was worse. My yard turned into a creek. The silt fence failed at a seam, and a slurry of sand took out my herb spiral. I emailed Marie at the insurer, a series of photos and a sentence that said damages increased. She called and said they could increase plants to $1,200. I said the herb spiral is a structure, the grade is altered, and the encroachment is ongoing. She said they would cover restoration after the remediation. We were all riding this turtle. Update 3. Day 43. Sungrove arrived with a demolition permit, a structural engineer, and 4 workers who looked like they could lift cartoon pianos. The plan was to break the shell in sections, haul debris out through Darren's side yard, protect my line with plywood, then re-excavate on their side to proper setbacks. The city inspector watched like an ant at a recital. Darren tried theater and said they would sue if the company ruined their soil. Trent, the general manager, rubbed his temples and said they had already been served with reality. The jackhammers began. Shot concrete gave up chunks like a glacier in a documentary. Moose howled. Kelsey watched from their sliding door, face and hands. I stood inside because watching someone lose a dream hurts even when that dream was inside your yard. By noon, the offending corner was rubble. The crew dumped debris into a dumpster that had to have its own permit, and Carol checked. The engineer marked out the new interior line with spray paint, 5 feet and 6 inches off the true boundary to give extra room. They installed new rebar, shot new concrete for the wall, and began the slow process of turning a hot mess into a slightly cooler mess. Sungrove lawyer emailed my attorney a settlement draft. They would restore my grade, rebuild my fence on the true line at their cost, pay for landscaping replacement up to $3,500, and cut me a $2,000 check for loss of quiet enjoyment if I agreed not to file anything further, and to grant a temporary construction license for access during demolition and rebuild. My attorney revised it. We added that no admission does not mean no facts, that access is limited to a 10-foot corridor, no equipment in my yard, no storage, work hours 8 to 5, erosion control maintained, and a clause that they would cover any homeowners association fines attributable to the encroachment. They signed. Petty season began. Darren, needing to be the main character in a tragedy, started mowing his lawn early on Saturdays, always along the boundary, like Morse code for be cool. He flew a drone over my yard once. I waved at it and emailed the homeowners association. Carol sent him a reminder about privacy and airspace and common decency. The drone retired. Kelsey brought me a potted rosemary with a note that said, "For the spiral someday." I accepted it. Update 4. Sungrove finished the rebuild portion in 3 weeks. New wall, new bonding inspection, barrier inspection. They erected a temporary safety fence that incidentally looked like humility. The city signed off on the shell as rebuilt inside their line. Deck regrade kept 5 feet clear to the boundary. The easement along my side remained as intended and diggable. Their insurer, Marie, cut me the $2,000 check and paid my landscape invoice from the company I hired that treats soil like religion. We rebuilt the herb spiral with stone and added a French drain along the boundary that ties into the swale on their side, so the next time clouds are angry, my time survives. Fence day was surprisingly joyful. Sungrove, per settlement, paid Cedar Grove Fencing to remove the chain link and install a board-on-board cedar fence exactly on the true line, following the lath my surveyor set. I gotta pick the cap style. I chose flat with trim because I am that person. The crew was careful around roots and utilities. The result was straight, level, adult. The Homeowners Association sent Darren a fine invoice for the initial architectural review violation and non-compliance during stop work. He posted another neighborhood essay about overregulation and yard tyrants. Carol responded that the committee is volunteer and exists because we all like not drowning. Rick posted a photo of his disputed fence from many years ago. Rick is eternal. Update 5. By August, the pool was finished inside their line, the fence was up, and my yard looked like a place where someone loves basil. The code case closed. Sungrove License took a recorded ding, and rumor via a very chatty electrician said they fired the layout person who thought approximate was a unit of measure. Darren and Kelsey had a pool party with family only. I did not attend. I watered my salvias with the concentration of a monk. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from Sungrove addressed to me and the Homeowners Association, a careful statement of regret for the inconvenience to the community and appreciation for the opportunity to resolve. I filed it under People Who Learn Today. Kelsey and I had a fence chat through the slats. She said she knows I did what I had to, and said Darren is still Darren. Moose wagged like forgiveness. I said I am sorry for their summer. Both things were true. I planted a hedge 5 feet inside my side of the new fence, podocarpus, because Carol says it is elegant. The hedge will be tall one day, a green sigh that says here without screaming mine. I keep the survey framed in my office, not just because I like lines, but because I like boundaries that were tested and held. It turns out a property line is not just a distance on a plat, it is a practice. It is the practice of saying no with full sentences, of documenting even when your hands shake, of remembering you can be kind and also not be a doormat. Darren still mows early sometimes. Moose still drools like diplomacy. Kelsey and I exchange baked goods through a gate that sits exactly on the line. Carol waves from her mailbox like a benevolent hall monitor. The oak in my front yard sheds leaves into everyone's gutters indiscriminately, because trees do not care about plats. Sometimes, when the evening light turns the fence gold, I imagine the pool where it used to be in my yard, and I feel two things at once: grief for a neighbor's expensive mistake, and gratitude for a system that, when prodded with patience and paperwork, still mostly works.